They said he had 3 days to live. His brain was shutting down. His family watched him disappear, minute by minute, whilst senior doctors stood helpless. No one knew what was killing him. No diagnosis. No cure. No hope. Then a young junior doctor saw something everyone missed, one tiny clue buried in forgotten test results. But when she tried her treatment, he almost died on the table. She had one last chance. One final theory. Time was running out. His heart was failing. And if she was wrong, she'd be the one who killed him. This is what happened next. Graham Taylor wasn't a rich man, but he was wealthy in the things that truly mattered. Every morning at 5:30, he would wake up in his modest 3-bedroom home in Brighton, kiss his wife Sarah on the forehead whilst she still slept, and head downstairs to brew the first pot of tea. By 6 o'clock, he'd be out the door, his worn work boots laced tight, his metal lunchbox packed by Sarah the night before. Graham was a maintenance supervisor at the local community centre. For 17 years, he'd kept the building running, fixing leaks, painting walls, repairing broken windows. But more than that, he kept spirits high. He knew every child's name in the after-school club. He remembered which elderly members needed help carrying their chairs. He was the heartbeat of that place. At home, he was everything. Sarah worked part-time at a bakery, but it was Graham's steady wage that paid the mortgage, kept the lights on, and put food on the table. Their daughter Lucy was in her 2nd year at university studying nursing, her fees carefully managed by Graham's meticulous budgeting. Their son Oliver, 15 and football mad, depended on his dad for lifts to practice, for advice, for everything a boy that age needs from his father. But Graham had one dream that burned quietly in his chest for nearly 2 decades. He'd always wanted to take his family to the Lake District. Not for a day trip, for a proper week, staying in a little cottage by the water. He'd been saving for years, £5 or £10 at a time, hidden in an old biscuit tin at the back of the wardrobe. Last month, he'd finally done it. He'd booked the cottage for August. He'd told Sarah over Sunday dinner and she'd cried happy tears. Lucy had hugged him so tight. Oliver had actually put down his phone and smiled. Life was good. Life was simple. Life was full. Then came the morning that changed everything. It was a Tuesday. Graham woke up feeling strange. Not ill exactly, but off. His head felt heavy, like it was filled with cotton wool. He brushed it off, made the tea, went to work. By lunchtime, he couldn't remember where he'd put his tools. By 3 o'clock, his hands were trembling so badly he couldn't hold a screwdriver. His colleague, Dennis, found him sitting on the floor of the supply cupboard, confused and sweating. "Graham? Mate, what's wrong?" Graham tried to answer, but the words wouldn't come out right. His vision blurred. The room spun. An ambulance was called. Sarah got the phone call at the bakery. Her whole world stopped. The tray of scones she was holding crashed to the floor. She didn't even take off her apron, just ran. At the hospital, the doctor's face was grave. Graham was conscious but confused. He didn't know what day it was. He kept asking for his father, who'd been dead for 12 years. "We're running tests," the doctor said. "We're not sure what this is yet." Lucy caught the first train home from Manchester, her heart pounding the entire journey. Oliver sat in the hospital corridor, his football kit still on, staring at the floor in silence. The tests came back strange. Graham's brain scan showed unusual activity. His blood work was abnormal but didn't match any clear diagnosis. One doctor suggested a stroke. Another thought it might be meningitis. A third mentioned a rare autoimmune disorder. They started treatment for bacterial infection. Then viral. Then inflammation. Nothing worked. Within 3 days, Graham couldn't walk. His speech became slurred. He didn't recognize Oliver. He called Lucy by his sister's name. The family stopped living. Sarah stopped going to work. Lucy deferred her university assignments. Oliver stopped going to football, stopped seeing his mates, stopped being a teenager. The house that had been full of warmth and laughter became a place of whispered phone calls and tears behind closed doors. The biscuit tin stayed at the back of the wardrobe, untouched. And in a bed on the neurology ward of Brighton General Hospital, Graham Taylor, the man who fixed everything for everyone, was broken, and no one knew how to fix him. The senior consultant, Dr. Pritchard, a man with 30 years of experience, stood at the foot of Graham's bed and shook his head slowly. "I'm sorry," he said quietly to Sarah. "We're doing everything we can. But I need you to prepare yourselves. Whatever this is, it's moving fast." Sarah's knees buckled. Lucy caught her. Oliver turned and walked out of the room, his fists clenched, his heart shattering. And somewhere down the corridor, a young junior doctor named Emma Clark stood outside the nurse's station, reading Graham Taylor's file for the third time, her brow furrowed in concentration. Something didn't make sense. Something was missing. And she couldn't let this family fall apart. Not like this. The Taylors did what every desperate family does, they searched for answers anywhere they could find them. Sarah spent entire nights on her laptop, reading medical journals she barely understood, joining online forums for rare diseases, messaging strangers across the world who'd experienced anything similar. Lucy contacted every neurologist in the south of England, begging for second opinions. Even Oliver, quiet and shattered as he was, printed out articles from the school library and brought them to his mum in neat, hopeful stacks. Graham was transferred to a specialist unit in London. A renowned neurologist, Dr. Kominski, examined him thoroughly. She ordered advanced MRI scans, lumbar punctures, genetic screenings. She consulted with colleagues in Europe and America. Her conclusion was the same. "I'm sorry. This doesn't match any known pathology. We're treating the symptoms, but without knowing the root cause." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. They tried steroids. Graham's liver markers spiked dangerously. They tried immunotherapy. He had a severe allergic reaction and nearly stopped breathing. They tried experimental antivirals. His kidneys began to fail. Each treatment was a new hope. Each failure was a deeper wound. Graham's condition deteriorated. He stopped speaking entirely. His eyes, once bright and full of mischief, became distant and glassy. He no longer knew where he was. The strong, capable man who'd carried his children on his shoulders, who'd danced with Sarah in the kitchen, who'd fixed 1,000 broken things, was disappearing before their eyes. The doctor's language began to change. Words like palliative and comfortable started appearing in conversations. The senior specialists, for all their experience and qualifications, had given up trying to cure him. Now they were just trying to ease his suffering. Sarah refused to accept it. She sat by Graham's bed day and night, holding his hand, talking to him, playing his favorite songs on her phone. She told him about the cottage in the Lake District, described the view he'd see from the window, promised him they'd still go. But even her voice was breaking now. Lucy cried in the hospital chapel, praying to a God she wasn't sure she believed in. Oliver punched a wall in the car park and bloodied his knuckles, the pain in his hand nothing compared to the pain in his chest. It was during one of these dark, hopeless days that Dr. Emma Clark first introduced herself. Emma was 27, only 2 years out of medical school. She'd been assigned to the neurology department at Brighton General 3 months ago. She was bright, top of her class, a natural diagnostician, but she knew what everyone thought of her. Too young. Too inexperienced. Too eager. The senior doctors tolerated her, sometimes listened to her observations, but rarely took her seriously. She'd been watching Graham's case from the beginning. She'd sat in on the consultations, read every test result, listened to every senior opinion. And something about it haunted her. Not just the medical mystery, though that fascinated her, but the family. The way Sarah held Graham's hand. The way Lucy read to her father even though he couldn't respond. The way Oliver sat in the corner, silent and hurting, trying to be brave. Emma saw herself in them. Years ago, her own father had been ill, not like this, but serious enough that she'd felt that same helpless terror. She'd been 15, the same age as Oliver. She remembered what it felt like to watch a parent suffer, to see doctors shrug their shoulders, to feel the ground disappearing beneath your feet. She'd become a doctor because of that feeling. Because she never wanted another family to feel that abandoned. One evening, after the senior team had finished their rounds and gone home, Emma stood at the foot of Graham's bed. Sarah was dozing in the chair beside him, exhausted. Lucy had gone to get tea. Oliver was in the corridor. Emma pulled up Graham's chart on the computer. She went through every single test result again. Slowly. Carefully. That's when she saw it. One blood test from the very first day, a routine panel that had been marked normal and filed away. But Emma noticed something. One value, tucked away in the corner of the report. It was slightly elevated. Only just outside normal range. Easy to miss. Easy to dismiss. But it didn't fit with anything else. She checked the notes. No one had mentioned it. No one had followed up. Her heart began to beat faster. She opened her laptop and started searching medical databases. She cross-referenced Graham's symptoms with that single abnormal value. Most results were dead ends. But then, buried in a case study from a hospital in Oslo, she found something. A patient with similar presentation. Similar confusion, similar deterioration. Similar mysterious test results. The diagnosis had been incredibly rare. So rare that most doctors would never see a case in their entire career. And the treatment was completely different from everything Graham had been given. Emma's hands trembled. This could be it. This could be the answer. But she was a junior doctor. If she was wrong, she could make things worse. She could kill him. If she did nothing, he would die anyway. She looked at Graham, this man she'd never met before he was ill, but whose life she'd come to care about so deeply. She thought of Sarah, of Lucy, of Oliver. She thought of that cottage in the Lake District. She took a deep breath. She made her decision. She would try. No matter what the senior doctors said. No matter the risk to her career. She would fight for Graham Taylor. But first, she had to convince his family to trust her, a doctor they'd never heard of, with a theory no one else believed. Sarah woke up as Emma approached. Their eyes met. "Mrs. Taylor," Emma said softly. "I think I might know what's wrong with your husband. And I think I can help him." Sarah's expression was a mixture of desperate hope and exhausted disbelief. "Please," she whispered. "Please save him." Emma knew she couldn't just walk in and take over Graham's care. The hospital didn't work like that. She needed approval, support, evidence. But more than that, she needed to be absolutely certain. She spent the entire night in the hospital library, going through every piece of research she could find. The condition she suspected was called autoimmune encephalitis with paraneoplastic features, a disorder where the body's immune system mistakenly attacks the brain, sometimes triggered by a hidden cancer so small it doesn't show up on standard scans. It was incredibly rare. The symptoms matched Graham's case almost perfectly. But the test that confirmed it, a specific antibody panel, took nearly a week to process, and they were sent to a specialist laboratory in Germany. Graham didn't have a week. The next morning, Emma requested an urgent meeting with Dr. Pritchard, the senior consultant. She brought her research, her notes, the case study from Oslo. Dr. Pritchard listened, his face neutral. When she finished, he sighed. "Dr. Clark, I appreciate your enthusiasm. But this is an extremely rare diagnosis. The chances that a patient in Brighton happens to have this particular condition are minuscule. We've already tested for the common autoimmune encephalitis markers, they were negative. But not this specific antibody," Emma pressed. "It requires a different test. If I'm right." "If you're right, then we'd need to start aggressive immunotherapy and chemotherapy immediately," Dr. Pritchard interrupted. "Treatment that could kill him if you're wrong. Treatment that might kill him even if you're right, given how weak he is now. If we do nothing, he dies anyway, Emma said, her voice stronger than she felt. You said so yourself. We've run out of options. Dr. Pritchard studied her for a long moment. This isn't a textbook, Dr. Clark. This is a real human life. This is a family. The responsibility. I know, Emma said. I know exactly what it is. That's why I'm asking. There was a silence. Then Dr. Pritchard made his decision. Send the test to Germany. If it comes back positive, we'll discuss treatment. Until then, we continue supportive care only. It wasn't what Emma had hoped for, but it was something. She ordered the test that same day. Then she sat down with Sarah, Lucy, and Oliver and explained everything. I believe your husband, your father, has a condition that's been attacking his brain. His immune system thinks his brain cells are the enemy. If I'm right, we can treat it. But the test takes time, Anne. She hesitated. I don't think we have much time. What do we do? Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. We wait, Emma said. And we hope I'm right. But hope, as it turned out, was not enough. 3 days later, at 2 o'clock in the morning, the alarms in Graham's room began screaming. Emma was asleep in the on-call room when her pager went off. She ran to the ICU, her heart in her throat. Graham was seizing, his body convulsing violently, monitors flashing red, nurses surrounding him. He's been seizing for 4 minutes, one of the nurses shouted. We've given diazepam, not responding. Emma's mind raced. The seizure meant the brain inflammation was getting worse. Much worse. They gave more medication. The seizure finally stopped, but Graham didn't wake up. His brain activity on the monitor was dangerously low. Dr. Pritchard arrived 10 minutes later. He examined Graham, checked the monitors, and turned to Emma with a grim expression. His brain is shutting down. Even if your test comes back positive, he won't survive long enough for treatment to work. Then we start treatment now, Emma said. Without confirmation? Absolutely not. We don't have time to wait. Dr. Clark, Dr. Pritchard said firmly, I understand your passion, but this is not your call to make. Emma felt everything crumbling. She'd been so sure. So certain she could save him. But maybe she'd been wrong. Maybe she was just a junior doctor playing at being a hero, and now this man was going to die because she'd wasted precious time chasing a theory. She stepped out of the ICU, her hands shaking, tears burning in her eyes. In the corridor, Sarah sat with her children, their faces pale and terrified. What's happening? Sarah asked. Emma couldn't answer. She couldn't bear to tell them she'd failed. She walked to the bathroom, locked herself in a cubicle, and let herself break down. She cried, for Graham, for his family, for her own helplessness. But then, as she washed her face in the sink, trying to pull herself together, something clicked in her mind. She thought about that first blood test. The one value that had been slightly elevated. It was a liver enzyme. A specific one. She'd focused so much on the neurological symptoms that she'd almost overlooked it. But what if it wasn't just a random abnormality? What if it was a clue? That particular enzyme could be elevated if there was a tiny tumor somewhere in the body. Too small to see on a normal scan. But if she looked in exactly the right place with exactly the right imaging technique. Her heart began to pound again. She pulled out her phone and called the radiology department. This is Dr. Clark. I need an urgent PET scan for Graham Taylor. Full body. I'm looking for microscopic malignancy. It's 3 a.m, Dr. Clark. I know. Please. It's life or death. There was a pause. Then, I'll call in the team. 2 hours later, Graham was in the scanner. Emma stood in the control room, barely breathing, watching the images appear on the screen. And there it was. A tiny mass. No bigger than a pea. Hidden deep in Graham's left lung. so small that every other scan had missed it. But it was there. And Emma knew this was the trigger. This microscopic cancer was producing proteins that were causing Graham's immune system to attack his brain. She had been right. Now she just had to convince everyone else. And pray there was still time to save him. Emma didn't wait for morning rounds. She called Dr. Pritchard at 5:30, waking him up, and told him what she'd found. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "You did an unauthorized PET scan in the middle of the night." His voice was tight. "I found the tumor, Dr. Pritchard. It's paraneoplastic encephalitis." "I was right." Another pause. "Then, I'll be there in 20 minutes. When Dr. Pritchard arrived and saw the scan, his expression changed. He studied the images, cross-referenced them with Graham's symptoms, and slowly nodded. "It fits," he admitted. "It all fits." "We need to start treatment immediately," Emma urged. "Immunotherapy to stop the brain inflammation, and chemotherapy to target the tumor. He's incredibly weak, Dr. Clark. His body has been through hell. This treatment is aggressive. There's a very real chance it could kill him." "There's a certainty that doing nothing will kill him," Emma replied. Dr. Pritchard looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. He saw not just a junior doctor, but a determined, intelligent woman who'd done what his entire senior team had failed to do. "All right," he said. "But you're going to lead this. It's your diagnosis. Your responsibility. I'll support you, but this is on you." Emma's stomach twisted with fear and determination. "Understood." They presented the plan to Sarah, Lucy, and Oliver together. Emma explained the tumor, the immune response, the treatment protocol. She was honest about the risks. "There's no guarantee," she said gently. "He's very ill. The treatment is hard on the body. But if we do nothing—" "We trust you," Sarah said, gripping Emma's hand. "Please. Try." The treatment began immediately. They started with high-dose steroids and immunotherapy drugs to calm the immune attack on Graham's brain. Simultaneously, they began targeted chemotherapy for the tiny lung tumor. The first 24 hours were terrifying. Graham's blood pressure dropped dangerously low. His oxygen levels fluctuated. Twice, the team had to resuscitate him. Emma didn't leave his side. She monitored every number, adjusted every dosage, second-guessed every decision. The weight of his life pressed down on her like a physical thing. Sarah sat in the corner, praying silently. Lucy held her brother, both of them too scared to speak. On the second day, something changed. Graham's temperature, which had been spiking uncontrollably for weeks, began to stabilize. The inflammation markers in his blood started, very slowly, to decrease. "It's working," one of the nurses whispered. Emma didn't dare believe it yet. But on the third day, when she checked Graham's neurological responses, his pupils reacted properly to light for the first time in 2 weeks. On the fourth day, he squeezed Sarah's hand. On the fifth day, he opened his eyes. "Sarah." His voice was barely a whisper, rough from the breathing tube that had been removed the day before. Sarah let out a sob that was half laugh, half cry. "I'm here. I'm here, love." Lucy and Oliver rushed to the bedside. The four of them held each other, crying and laughing and hardly believing it was real. Emma watched from the doorway, tears streaming down her own face. Graham's recovery was slow. It took weeks of physiotherapy before he could walk again. His memory had gaps, and some things he had to relearn. But every day, he got a little stronger. A little more himself. The chemotherapy successfully treated the tumor. The immunotherapy stopped his body from attacking his brain. Against all odds, Graham Taylor was going to live. 6 weeks after that terrible night when he'd nearly died, Graham was discharged from hospital. The whole family came to thank Emma. Sarah brought flowers from her garden. Lucy gave her a card that simply said, "You gave us our dad back." Oliver, still a quiet boy, just hugged her tightly and whispered, "Thank you." But it was Graham himself who said the words that Emma would carry with her for the rest of her career. "You didn't give up on me," he said, his eyes, clear and bright again, meeting hers. "Everyone else did. But you didn't. You saw me. Not just a patient. But a person. A dad. A husband. Someone worth fighting for. You were always worth fighting for," Emma said, her voice thick with emotion. As the Taylors walked out of the hospital together, Graham moving slowly but moving on his own, Emma felt something settle in her chest. A deep certainty that this was exactly where she was meant to be. Doing exactly what she was meant to do. 3 months later, Emma received a postcard. It showed a beautiful lake surrounded by green hills. The Lake District. On the back, in Sarah's handwriting, it said, "We made it to the cottage. All of us. Together." Graham says the view is even better than he imagined. "Thank you for giving us this moment. Thank you for never giving up. With love and gratitude forever, the Taylor family." Emma pinned the postcard to the wall of her tiny office at the hospital. On the hard days, and there would be many, she would look at it and remember. Remember that medicine isn't just about textbooks and test results. It's about humanity. Compassion. Seeing the person behind the patient. It's about fighting when everyone else has given up. It's about hope. And sometimes, when you refuse to let go of hope, when you look deeper and fight harder and care more, miracles happen. Not because of fancy equipment or years of experience, but because one person decided that another person's life, their dreams, their family, their future, was worth everything. Dr. Emma Clark learned that lesson with Graham Taylor. And she would carry it with her every single day for the rest of her life.